what is Stoicism? Today, we're diving into this ancient philosophy that has fascinated thinkers and seekers of inner peace for centuries. Stoicism emerged in the 3rd century BC during the classical period of antiquity, following the great thinkers Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Unlike many philosophies that have faded over time, Stoicism has endured, evolving across centuries while retaining its core ideas. It's not just a system of thought, but a way of life, a total philosophy that unites theory with action, understanding with practice. This can make Stoicism hard to approach. Where does one even start with a philosophy so vast and rich? To begin, we can look at one of the most famous Stoic principles, something that serves as a foundation for the entire philosophy. There is what depends on us, and there is what does not depend on us. This concept might sound simple, but it holds profound wisdom that guides us in understanding our limits as both human beings and individuals. Let's unpack this a bit. According to the Stoics, we must recognize a basic division in life. There are things within our control, and there are things outside of it. For example, it's within my control to work diligently, to seek truth, and to act with integrity. But it's beyond my control to be born into wealth, to have perfect health, or to control how others view me. In essence, Stoicism asks us to understand that while we inherit certain aspects of our lives, we also shape ourselves through the choices we make. And yes, this boundary can sometimes feel blurry. Take wealth, for instance. While it's technically beyond our control to be born wealthy, we can certainly work hard to earn a comfortable living. So there are nuances and some aspects can be debatable. But the core idea stands. The Stoics challenge us to discern between what we can and cannot change. Recognizing this distinction for the Stoics is only the beginning. It's a stepping stone toward understanding that we are, by nature, limited. This humility, which Stoicism encourages, is a powerful acknowledgement of our finitude and our inherent limitations. If we have wishes, desires, or ambitions that are completely unattainable, Stoicism warns that we will inevitably encounter our own boundaries. And when we do, there's a risk: disappointment, frustration, unhappiness. So, Stoicism calls us to focus on what is within our control, to desire only what we can realistically achieve. This way, we align our aspirations with reality, reducing our suffering and fostering inner peace. What is impossible is not accessible. This is the Stoics' reminder, but it's often a truth we overlook. Today, we'll dive into why Stoicism emphasizes recognizing our limits and embracing reality. It might sound obvious. Impossible things are, well, impossible. But the Stoics stress this because in our daily lives we tend to ignore it. We chase what we can't control, leading to suffering. This key Stoic idea, what depends on us versus what does not, is vital in guiding our actions and understanding where our influence begins and ends. Take, for example, death. We know life is finite, yet when someone we love passes away, we struggle to accept it. Stoicism calls this a logical aberration because death is a fundamental part of human existence. It's not just about acknowledging mortality, but deeply accepting it, to the point that we can view it without fear. Stoic philosophy is not just theoretical, it's a lived practice. It challenges us to accept death not with sadness, but with the understanding that it's a natural law. Only then, they argue, can we free ourselves from the sorrow and suffering tied to this inevitable part of life. Imagine for a moment, do you ever wonder how and when you'll die? In what circumstances? The very thought can trigger deep anxiety, a sign, the Stoics would say, that we haven't fully embraced the reality of death. This anxiety is a product of our imagination, not reality. For the Stoics, death is nothing to fear because we're never actually conscious of it. We are alive, then in an instant we're gone. We never truly meet death. It's the fear of an idea, not an experience. This avoidance of reality extends beyond death to our daily emotions. we're seldom in the present, Stoics argue. We're either lost in future anxieties or held back by past regrets. And these mental projections, the fears, the what-ifs, they shape our emotions, which the Stoics call passions. In ancient Greek, pathos, passion, translates to suffering. Passions, they explain, are what we passively experience. Fear, jealousy, anger, regret. These emotions are creations of our mind, indications that we haven't fully accepted life as it is. Consider jealousy. If I envy my neighbor's beautiful house or career, it's not truly about my neighbor, it's about me. My mind has created a narrative that I lack something. This jealousy isn't caused by my neighbor's success, but by my own dissatisfaction and projection. For the Stoics, this projection, not my neighbor's achievements, is the real problem. It's within me to change my outlook, to release the emotions that weigh me down. The Stoics' second major lesson? I must not be affected by what doesn't depend on me. Emotions, they argue, are logical fallacies because they don't solve the root issues. The cause of our emotions, Stoicism teaches, is within ourselves. Yet, we often blame external forces, thinking, I'm angry because they made me angry. For the Stoics, this mindset is nonsense. To truly live with resilience and peace, we must take responsibility for our emotional responses and focus on what we can control. This is the essence of Stoicism, accepting reality, not resisting it, and finding inner peace by focusing only on what depends on us. Mastering our emotions. If we feel anger, Stoicism teaches that it's not because of others' actions, but because we haven't yet mastered our emotions. Often, we look to outside reasons to justify our feelings. They made me angry. They made me jealous. But what if we're responsible for our emotions entirely? There are people who manage their emotions with grace, who don't let even the most serious or painful events shake them. These people, we say, are stoic, unmoved, impassive, undisturbed. In everyday language, being stoic suggests a kind of indifference. But stoic indifference is not an absence of feeling or consciousness. It's a deliberate and powerful acceptance that some things are beyond our control. Why, the Stoics ask, should we let what we cannot control disturb us? If anger won't resolve the reasons for our anger, why indulge in it? If jealousy won't bring us what we envy, why dwell on it? Think of emotions like heat from energy we can't control. When that energy builds up, we feel compelled to release it through anger, frustration, or bitterness. But this release doesn't change the problem. Imagine you bang your knee against the coffee table. You might curse at the table or hit it. But does it ease your pain? Not really. Or suppose you're watching a TV show and dislike the guest speaker. You could shout at the screen or even throw the remote, but will it make the speaker disappear? No. The Stoics would say these outbursts reflect an inability to accept the world as it is. Emotions, they argue, often cloud our thinking and distract us from finding practical solutions. They advise us to shift our perspective instead of wasting energy on what we can't change. Don't seek to change reality, they say, but change the way you view it. It's a call to let go of futile reactions and instead harness our energy for inner peace and clarity. What does it mean to see the world this way? Is it a cold philosophy, or is it perhaps the key to real emotional freedom? The philosophy of submission, Stoicism or lucidity. Some criticize Stoicism as a philosophy of submission, of passivity, arguing that accepting all things as there seems like surrender. They worry that Stoicism may mean accepting injustice, tolerating lies, and even embracing the immorality of others. This criticism highlights an important question. If Stoicism teaches us to accept what we can't control, doesn't that mean accepting harmful or unfair things? For Stoicism, the answer is more nuanced. Stoicism indeed emphasizes that we need to discern between what we can and cannot change. The philosophy urges us to invest our energy in areas where we have control. Grant me the strength to change what I can, say the Stoics. Yet, the trick is recognizing what is within our control and what is not, and acting accordingly. Stoicism doesn't demand renouncing action altogether. On the contrary, it asks us to take responsible action within the limits of our abilities, while being conscious of the scope of our influence. To think we can change the world on our own, the Stoics suggest, is to fall into the trap of ego, of overestimating our power. True wisdom is understanding that the changes we can make are small in the grand scheme of the world, but they are valuable. If we refuse to act because our actions feel limited, we are surrendering not out of wisdom, but out of ego, because we are disappointed in our inability to transform the entire world. So, Stoicism is not a philosophy of renunciation or resignation, but rather a philosophy of lucidity. Those who accomplish great things tend to focus on what is realistically achievable. In contrast, striving for the impossible leads to inaction, frustration, and passivity. Stoicism, therefore, is practical. It aligns actions with what is possible and urges us to direct our energies towards achievable goals. Emotions like anger, jealousy, or frustration distort our perception of reality. They impose a filter on our experience, separating us from the truth of the world as it is. Emotions, the Stoics believe, can make us slaves, hindering our ability to understand and respond to reality accurately. Recognizing that the world existed before us and will continue without us offers perspective. It does not diminish our actions, but helps us appreciate the limits of our influence. Stoicism teaches that human existence's goal is happiness and wisdom, in turn, relies on understanding and accepting reality. By embracing the world as it is, we free ourselves from suffering caused by resisting what we cannot change. Jean-Paul Sartre's words resonate with Stoic philosophy. The important thing is not what has been done to us, but what we do with what has been done to us. This idea captures the Stoic belief that, while our temperament and tendencies may not be fully within our control, we have the power to work on our character, to recognize and refine it. Understanding the laws of the world, recognizing cause and effect, and accepting our place within it allows us to live wisely. For the Stoics, the world operates on a system of causes. Nothing happens without a cause. Events may be logical or explainable, though not necessarily justifiable in a moral sense. The Stoic view that everything has a cause doesn't excuse wrongdoing, but rather highlights that nothing happens by random chance. Stoicism, then, is a philosophy not of blind submission, but of clarity, a reminder to focus our energies on what is within our grasp, while understanding and accepting the broader logic of the world. For the Stoics, the universe is entirely rational. Every event, every occurrence has a cause, even if these causes are beyond our understanding. If we perceive something as a coincidence, it is only due to our limited, individual perspective. The sense of coincidence, then, is not a true mystery. It's a gap in our knowledge. Imagine observing a city from above. From this elevated view, you can see two people moving toward the same intersection. You know they will cross paths long before they see each other. From this perspective, their meeting is not surprising. It is simply a logical outcome. But to the individuals, the encounter feels random, perhaps even fated. For Stoics, the sense of coincidence or surprise only exists at the individual level. If we were able to adopt a higher, rational point of view, nothing would surprise us. Everything would reveal itself as the necessary effect of causes that came before. This belief reflects the Stoic view of determinism. Everything is the result of preceding causes. Nothing happens without a reason, and everything follows a logical sequence. Thus, Stoics argue that we should aim to align ourselves with the universe's rational order. The closer we live in harmony with this rationality, the freer and happier we become, as we reduce our susceptibility to emotions like fear, sadness, or frustration. Emotions are seen as obstacles that limit our rational potential and clarity of thought, keeping us from understanding reality as it truly is. But doesn't this ideal seem unattainable? A life completely free from emotion and bound solely by logic might appear inhuman. Indeed, Stoicism acknowledges that it is difficult to achieve absolute rationality, and they do not deny the challenge. They emphasize that while absolute wisdom and happiness may be difficult to attain, striving toward this ideal brings us closer to freedom from emotional disturbances. Happiness, in the Stoic view, is not found in satisfying our desires, but in overcoming our dependence on them. Desire, for Stoics, is a feeling that signifies our attachment to something external, a craving that reveals our lack of self-sufficiency. When we desire something, we place our happiness in the hands of an external object. By doing so, we make ourselves vulnerable, allowing the attainment or lack of that object to dictate our contentment. This attachment to desire, Stoics argue, is an illusion. The moment we desire something, we implicitly admit that our happiness depends on something outside ourselves, which only increases our susceptibility to disappointment. The Stoic approach to happiness, then, is one of internal strength and independence. By reducing our attachment to fleeting desires, we cultivate a mindset where our well-being no longer depends on external factors. We can focus on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and reactions, and let go of what lies beyond us. In this way, we achieve not only rational clarity, but also a sense of profound inner freedom. Happiness, for the Stoics, is about freeing oneself from dependency on desires. A desire, like wanting a cigarette, brings only temporary satisfaction, but the craving soon returns. This cycle shows that satisfying a desire does not lead to lasting happiness. It simply fills a momentary void, only for the need to resurface later. True happiness, in contrast, is found in no longer being controlled by these wants. When we're fully content, we don't desire anything because we're not experiencing lack. Stoics argue that it's possible to be happy even in illness, solitude, or physical suffering because true happiness is internal and doesn't rely on external conditions. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus exemplified this through his own life as a slave. He recounts a moment when his arm was being twisted, and he calmly told his captors, "You're going to end up breaking this arm." And when it did break, he simply remarked, "I told you so." His response shows the Stoic ideal of enduring suffering with detachment. While extreme, it illustrates the Stoic belief that one's inner peace and freedom from suffering are attainable regardless of circumstances. This level of self-control may seem like an unattainable ideal, but there are contemporary parallels, such as yogis who practice extreme mental discipline and can withstand significant pain by separating their consciousness from physical sensations. For Stoics, practices like meditation are essential because they help shift focus away from physical desires and toward inner wisdom. Through meditation, we learn to observe our thoughts and sensations without attachment, building a stronger foundation of happiness that isn't swayed by the rise and fall of external desires. In essence, Stoic happiness comes from cultivating a state of mind where desires no longer dictate our actions or emotions, allowing us to live with greater freedom, resilience, and inner peace. In conclusion, Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot, reminding us that true freedom lies in not being bound by external events. The Stoics saw the universe as governed by unchanging laws, what they called fatality, a term that, unlike its modern interpretation, didn't imply a lack of free will. Instead, Stoics believed in a form of inner freedom, where we exercise control over our responses and find happiness, regardless of our circumstances. This does not mean passively accepting everything that happens, but approaching life with discernment, changing what we can and wisely accepting what we cannot. Modern personal development may adopt elements of Stoicism, Yet at its core, Stoicism is a deeper philosophy that pushes us to understand and accept the world as it is. Understanding the world allows us to navigate life with peace, recognizing that every event, good or bad, has reasons beyond our control. Accepting the inevitable, like the rain or cold, transforms our experience. What once seemed unpleasant becomes neutral. Personally, I practice Stoicism when I read comments on my videos, reminding myself that everything has a reason. This acceptance brings calm, aligning us with the rational order of life. I recommend Marcus Aurelius meditations. There's a calming power in his words, as if the logic brings balance within. In this state of emotional neutrality, life no longer feels like a chain of frustrations, but becomes a journey where everything, even suffering, is part of a rational order. Life may be more than reason, but embracing reason frees us from needless suffering. Thank you.